36, only 4 days left to the American Lung Association Fight for Air Climb.
So most people who can't imagine it, they reflect. It's like a mirror. They put that right on you. If they can't see themselves doing it, I can't see you doing it. I take that mirror and I totally discard it. And I say, what if I can be the 36th person to ever do it? So I use all their negativity as positivity and fuel to get me to where I need to go. What drives me today is being my best. And being my best is a never-ending journey. A lot of people call me obsessed. That's fine. I probably am obsessed. When you finally realize, like for me, that humble beginning I had, when you realize that I could have literally given up, and right now at 43, I could still be a 300-pound man spraying for cockroaches. It's truly amazing that a lot of us walk this planet Earth being a fraction of what we're capable of being. I look back on when I was 24 years old, and that could have been my 100%. If I chose to take the path of least resistance, that could have been my 100%. Never knowing that in that 300-pound body, the kid who couldn't read, all this other stuff, fourth grade reading level, is now a person that's been through almost every special ops training in the world, has broke several records, and has continued to grow. Once you realize what's on the other side of that, that will keep you, I'm the most driven person in the world, because I realized that I was leaving so much on the table. I was leaving so much on the table, never knowing that inside that fat guy was this person here. And once you peel the crust, peel that crust away and see who you really are, you open your mind to a whole nother world. So I've opened my mind up to a whole nother world that most people can't even fathom because they haven't dug deep into their own personal problems. So people think I'm crazy because I found a whole nother way of living. I think they're crazy for never even trying to get to the other side of whatever's in front of them. So what drives me every day is finding more of myself. So how I suggest to someone of breaking the habit of constantly making excuses is do something every day that sucks. There's a saying out there. There's a saying that says, triple down on your strengths. Tripling down on your strengths does one thing to you. It makes you very comfortable. It makes you very strong at what you're good at. So why people have excuses is that's the world they live in. They live in a world where if they're good at running, all they do is run. If they're good at reading, all they do is read. So the excuse world comes up is because when the world, life, doesn't give a damn what you're good at. It's just gonna put challenges in front of you. So when that challenge comes up that you're not great at, the first thing the whole triple down on your strengths mentality does is it forces you to say, I'm not good at it, so I'm not gonna do it. Versus saying, I'm not good at it, I'm gonna be great at it. I'm gonna figure out, I'm gonna put the work. That's how you start to callous your mind. The excuses that we're making are just because we're not good at it. So it makes us feel insecure. It makes us feel a certain way. That's why I tell everybody, you cannot fix anything in life until you fix yourself. A lot of people out here give great, how many people do you know in your life that give great advice? They give the best advice on the planet Earth, but their life's all jacked up. No one looks inside themselves because what they see inside is ugly. It's ugly, it's full of lies, it's full of secrets, it's full of insecurities. Once you dive into that, you have no more excuses because you'll start ripping away those layers of insecurities. The other end of those layers is exactly who you truly are. So do something every day that sucks. Get outside your comfort zone. Triple down on your weaknesses, not your strengths. That's how you grow. That's how you stop making excuses. So my book's coming out December 4th. It's called Can't Hurt Me. Why I titled it Can't Hurt Me is This book is a self-help memoir. We have a whole bunch of self-help books out there that are five-step this, five-step this. Mine is not a five-step program. Mine is about getting to the root of the problem. And the root of the problem is yourself. You have to master your own mind. And once you master your mind, your own mind, everything else is taken care of. So Can't Hurt Me is about life. It's about you. It's about my mentality, but you get to develop your own mentality. So life is full of people who are getting bullied, people who are, once again, insecure, people who are going through problems, a lot of problems. But if you have this mentality that you start to develop of you can't hurt me. When I was going through SEAL training, all the training I went through, it's what you say to yourself on a daily basis. If you say, you can't hurt me, can't hurt me. Every time I got my ass kicked in everything I did, whether it be a fight or a test or going through SEAL training or Ranger school, can't hurt me, can't hurt me, can't hurt me. It starts to get in your mind. And before you know it, it's the truth. So when you fail, you fall on your ass, somebody bullies you, whatever's going on in your life, can't hurt me. Because why that saying is true is not because you say it. You have to put the work in to develop that calloused mind to believe it's true. So a lot of people want to know what I say to myself when I'm out here doing these long events, my self-talk. So what are you saying to yourself, David, when you're out there and you're at mile 75 of a 135-mile run through Death Valley? Well, I tell myself, back in the day, I was the weakest person that God ever created. That's what I thought. I made this man to be the hardest man God ever created. That's what I tell myself. I tell myself I'm the hardest man that God ever created. Is it true? I don't care if it's true or not. I believe it. But a lot of people, like these books, self-talk, visualization. Self-talk doesn't mean anything. You can tell yourself you're the baddest person that ever lived. Self-talk without the work is just lies. So when I'm telling myself I'm the hardest man on the planet, when I'm in the worst situation possible, I'm going back to the 3 hours I put into training every day. I'm going back to the 3 a.m. wake-up call, looking at my running shoes thinking, God, dog, 75 days in a row, no days off, running 15 miles a day. I don't want to do it. And you lace them up. So when I'm in that horrible spot and I'm talking to myself, I'm also recalling all the training sessions, all the years, all the hard work. So when I talk to myself that way, that self-talk is real. It's not lies. Because if you're taking a test in school and you haven't studied for it, and you say, I'm going to pass this test, chances are you're going to fail it because you haven't put the time in to get the result of passing. So self-talk is huge, but putting the work in is bigger. There's a lot of people in life who are theorists. Theorists are people who, it may be that guy in the corner who's at the library all day long, old man with gray hair. He's a master of the mind. He mastered the mind by being a theorist. He got all these books and read about how the brain is supposed to work. That's a theorist. He has all these theories on how it's supposed to be done. You want to be a practitioner in life. A lot of people who study theories will put these bars, these invisible bars and barriers on your mind about what we can and cannot achieve as human beings. That's a theorist. A practitioner will listen to a man like a theorist and defy the odds. Don't ever be a theorist, be a practitioner. Be a guy who goes out there and actually does the work. Put yourself in situations. Like when I was going through Hell Week, I got to see where my mind was. It's 130 hours. Hell Week's 130 hours. At hour 48, 72, your mind is a mess. You're all over the place. A theorist would tell me what he thinks is going to happen. A practitioner dives into suffering, and as he's suffering, He's then writing the book while he's suffering. It's easy to write a book while you are in a nice 72-degree library flipping the page. A practitioner writes a book when he's in the hell, when he's in suffering, when it's 50-degree water, everybody's quitting, snot's coming out your nose. That's how you really start to figure out what the mind and body are capable of. Don't read a book about it. Don't read what some man wrote. Put yourself in the environment. See how you start to talk to yourself in the worst times, in the worst situations. And that's how you start to develop that real self-talk, that real visualization, the real tools to get through those hard times. You have to be willing to suffer to get to the other side. And on the other side of suffering is a whole nother world that people have no idea that even exists. I'm a big believer in doing things that make you uncomfortable. So we live in a world that we want to be as comfortable as we can. And we wonder why we have no growth. We wonder why when the smallest thing in our life gets difficult, we wonder why we cower and we run away. Because we are kind of living our whole life is set up that way. Our whole life is set up in the path of least resistance. We don't want to suffer. We don't want to feel discomfort. So the whole time we're living our lives in a very comfortable area. There's no growth in that. So for me, I realized that. The reason I became 297 pounds is because that was comfortable. What was very uncomfortable was running. What was very uncomfortable was being on a diet. What was very uncomfortable was trying to face things that I didn't want to face. And I also realized when I was really big, I had no growth. Why? Because I was living comfortable. So I realized for me to find growth, I had to face all of these different things that made me very, very uncomfortable. One thing I faced was running. I absolutely hated running. But I knew for me to grow, I had to do this thing every single day. I wanted to start callousing my mind. I wanted to start becoming a better person. And how you become a better person, how you gain mental toughness, how you become the person you want to be, is constantly facing the things that you don't want to face. If you constantly run away from things that you don't want to face, how is there growth? How is there mental toughness? I can give you a class all day long about self-talk, visualization, eat an elephant one bite at a time. But if you're never putting yourself in a situation to actually practice these things, you're never going to grow. I can't put you out there we're all going through a battle in our mind. A warrior is not a person that carries a gun. The biggest war you ever go through is right between your own ears. It's in your mind. We're all going through a war in our mind, and we have to callous our mind to fight that war and to win that war. So, one example I can give you about callousing your mind, about doing things that make you uncomfortable. There's a book out there called Lone Survivor. And there's a guy named Marcus Luttrell. He was on an operation where a bunch of guys died. And I knew all the guys that died. And I know Marcus Luttrell very well. This story touched my heart. And I basically went out there, found a foundation to raise money for it, called the Special Operations Warrior Foundation. You give 100% tuition for, let's say your dad died in the war. He was a special operator. If that guy had a kid, you get 100% tuition to go to college. Great foundation, great people working at the foundation. I'm going to do this. So I Googled the 10 hardest races in the world. And at this time in my life, I was not a runner. I maybe ran 10 miles the whole year. I was into bodybuilding, I was into weight training, and that's what I did. So I Googled the 10 hardest races in the world, and what came up, number one, was this race called the Badwater 135. It's a 135-mile race through Death Valley in the summertime. So I wanted to get in this race. I thought it was actually a stage race. I thought it was a race where you ran like 20 miles, set up a camp, and then ran 20 miles the next day. I didn't know people ran 100 miles, 135 miles at one time. You know, I know it's even possible. I had never even run a marathon. So I called the race director up. His name was Chris Kosman. And I called him up on a Wednesday. And this is in November. He said, David, to qualify for my race, you have to do 100 miles. And I said, 100 miles in a calendar year? I didn't know what was going on. He said, no, 100 miles in 24 hours or less. And I thought that was humanly impossible. He said, so you got to do that in 24 hours or less for me to consider you in my race. He goes, there's a race on Saturday. And I called him up on Wednesday. It was that 4 days for me to get ready for this race. And I run 10 miles the whole year. And so he said, if you qualify, if you do 100 miles, 24 hours or less, I might consider you in my race. So 4 days later, I'm out there in San Diego, and the race was called the San Diego One Day, where you run around a 24 or around a 1 mile track for 24 hours to see how many miles you can get. And so I go out there. I didn't know what I was doing. I had Mileplex and Ritz crackers, and I had a blue lawn chair. That's all I had. And I was gonna see my crew person every single mile. And I was gonna drink Mileplex and have a Ritz cracker. They had no water, had nothing. Went out there, got to mile 20, wasn't feeling too bad. Around mile 30, I started feeling my shins starting to get extremely sore. And I started to develop stress fractures, shin splints. I started feeling the metatarsals in my feet starting to break at around mile 50. By mile 70, I was totally destroyed. And I sat down in this blue lawn chair, and I was destroyed. And when a bigger person sits down, I don't know exactly how much I weighed, but I was extremely big. I was a power lifter, lifted a lot of weights, and I was not an endurance athlete by any means. So I sat down in this blue lawn chair, looked at my crew person, and I literally couldn't stand up. I was destroyed, and I couldn't go to the bathroom. I couldn't stand up to go to the bathroom. So I sat there, and I went to the bathroom myself. I was destroyed, and I was discolored, I was pale, I was dizzy, lightheaded. I was in the worst shape of my entire life. I'd been in 3 Hell Weeks, Ranger School, all these different training programs, and this was the worst situation I've been in my entire life. I thought I was literally dying. And all I could think about was, how can I get out of this chair? I have 30 miles to go. And everything I had gone through, I realized that the human mind, if you can put it in a very quiet, calm place and get it to calm down and not be so spastic, that you could possibly make this work out for you. How bad are you really? So I calmed myself down, and I had to make this enormous thing small. I had 30 more miles to run, and my body was in the worst shape in my entire life, the worst pain I ever felt in my life. So I broke this 30 miles thing down. I broke it down to small chunks. I calmed my mind down. I had to get water, had to get potassium, had to get sodium. I had to stop being so dizzy because I had to be able to stand up. So my dizziness went away after about an hour. I was able to stand up now. And I was going around this track at like 30-some minute mile. And I'll never get my crew person saying, hey, I got to mile 81. They said, you're not gonna make the time. I had 24 hours and I was going so slow, taking so much time. This is when I realized that the human mind, once everything gets connected, once the mind knows you're not gonna quit something, it's gonna try to find more. It's gonna try to give you more. Once it realizes you're not gonna take the path of least resistance, you're gonna stay here until it's done. My mind and my body and my spirit became one for the first time ever. For the first time ever, it became one. And I went to a level that I never thought was humanly possible for myself or anybody else. In that shape that I was in, I was able to run 19 miles. And I ran 19 miles, did 100 miles, actually did one more mile. I did 101 miles in 18 hours and 56 minutes. I'd overcome so many obstacles in my life, and this was the final crucible for me. And I got through it. And at the end of this race was such clarity to me. And it was just the most amazing thing I ever do in my life. Your brain is the most powerful weapon in the world. Once you put away your phones and your computers and all that we have nowadays, that's great. We're up to date. But your brain is the only thing you have when you're going through depression, when you're going through hard times, when you're going through death. Real life, you can't Google that, man. You're alone. You're alone. You may have a shrink you're going to, you may have a best friend you're going to, but there's 24 hours in the day where you're alone in this brain, and your brain is talking to you in all kind of ways, and it wants to control you and pull you in these different pockets. If you can't control your own brain and your brain controls you, you got to tell your brain where you want to go and how you want to go and how you want to get there. You got to control it. If not, it's over. What existed for me was, okay, man, how am I going to make this work? And all I knew back then was hard work. The only way anything gets accomplished. That's all I heard back in those days. You gotta work hard. You gotta work hard. I'm not getting I can't get this paragraph. I can't remember what the f***'s in this paragraph to pass this test to get in the military. Read again. Still not getting it. Read again. But if you're not getting it, write it out. And that's how I started learning. Okay, well, I gotta write out everything I do. And then write it out again, and write it out again. And guess what happened? I got it. I can't swim. I'm negative buoyant. Go back again. I can't swim. Go back again. Go back again. Go back again. I got it. I realized if I keep going back and going back and going back until the just becomes, your mind will say, okay, we're gonna figure it out. Because he is not going to stop. It's not like I'm gonna try one more time. No, it's just like alarm clock goes off, boop, we're going back. I can't read right, we're going back. I gave myself no way out, and my mind realized that. They said, okay, we're gonna adapt and overcome now. Like a lot of people say, trying hard. Your mind knows, man. It knows this guy's bull. Man, this guy's lying. There's no truth behind it. When I was in Navy SEAL training, people go, how were you there for 18 months? The program was only 6 months long. You were in 3 hell weeks in 1 year. No one's ever done that. How did you do that? I talk about the new norm. When I lived in a $7 a month place when I was growing up for a short period of time, I loved it. I didn't know any different. That was my norm. Once we moved out of that place, we moved to a $236 a month place. I was like, I never want to go back to that little piece of shit. But if you go back to that $7 a month place and you realize this is where I live, this is all I got. Your mind says, Roger that, this is home.
Day 36 in the books. Only 4 more workouts. The American Lung Association Fight for Aircon. Saturday, March 8th. Bank of America building, downtown San Francisco. See you there.